We are live and welcome to Reeve and the weekly Emotional Awareness show. And for anybody who hasn't seen these before, remember we do these every Tuesday night, GMT at 7 p.m. And as usual, every week I have a guest with me. And tonight I have the lovely lady called Adele Wang. Hello.
Hello, good to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming and join us. And tonight we're going to have a very interesting conversation all about energy healing and emotional healing. So we're going to bring in a lot of sort of topics around what Adele does with her healing journey. And so we'll take it from there. Would you like to introduce yourself
Sure.
because you're calling us all the way from Atlanta today, aren't you?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I work with people all around planet Earth these days with Zoom. I've got people in the UK and Australia. So, yeah, I am a spiritual mentor and teacher here. And I use a lot of energetic tools, especially for people who feel kind of lost on their way in terms of why am I here? When you're not clear on your purpose, and then what's my special genius? What am I being called to do? Because most people are wanting to create lives that matter. And without some intention around it, things can just sort of happen, and whatever happens is happening. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes it's, I don't know if this is what I really want, because whether you actually spend attention or not, your time, money, and energy, everything's going to come and go anyway. Yeah. So, but with the clients that I'm working on, they have a sense of there's something greater that they're meant to be doing. And sometimes it can feel a lot of anxiety when they don't know what it is. And I use a lot of energy tools because I find an energetic and spiritual approach much faster than more cognitive stuff. And I like to bring to the world things that you can't easily find anywhere else, because if a book could solve all your problems, I'd say everybody go read a book. If a podcast could solve your problem, but the problem with what I see right now going on with anyone, if you're out there struggling with stress and anxiety, what's really the missing link is connection. Connection with other humanoids. And that doesn't work very well if you're just by yourself in at home reading a self-help book. So, Kay, I love that you're putting on this show. I think we can add a lot of value and give people hope and ideas and new tools that they can make it to the next level. If people want to talk to me more, I'm fine to tell them how to reach me. But I think this is a conversation whose time has come. So if you're out there feeling anxious, confused, you're in the right place, because I lived that way for 30 some years. So don't be fooled. Everything I talk about now is a result of my own journey into now what I do now, because at one time I literally didn't know how to connect with people at all. Wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a time when it was like there was a tsunami in me, that I was so defensive and raw around it wasn't just any one person. It was people in general, because I was so obsessed with them liking me. I was so worried about what they thought of me. And my brain was constantly wanting to please, and this is a very common dynamic for anyone dealing with stress and overwhelm, especially if you're sensitive. Oh my God, teenagers are dealing with this, and it was through a series of working with spiritual medicine people, which is what I do now, that, wow, everything in my life changed. And now this is exactly the problem I love help people getting. So you can find your people. A lot of people are wandering around like, I don't know where my tribe is. Even you can feel lonely in a crowd. That is like the worst loneliness, don't you think, Kay? I mean, to be lonely in a crowd is awful. So that was me. So I'm very good at helping people find their tribe. Why are you here? What is your special genius? So then you've got the compass north towards better relationships, a better avocation or job, and a sense of my life of contribution in some way. So that's me. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, no, amazing. And it's funny because you're talking at the beginning about that sensation of going through the motions of everything rather than having a purpose. And it's like that gut washing machine feelings, like you're just being tumbled around through life, isn't it?
Oh,
setting
Mhm.
yourself a little series of missions and goals and accomplishments, and sort of taking little challenges on purpose versus just being like a piece of tumbleweed thrown around a washing machine and you're just falling apart. So yes, know the feeling. Again, having been there, it's not pleasant. But yeah. And then you say tsunami, and that's just like, when it is, it's so overwhelming at times. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And a lot of my clients look great on the outside. So I've got clients
Mm,
that hold all kinds of jobs and they're very competent, but on the inside, they feel flat. And
yeah,
sometimes it's a sense of, well, what worked before was all right, but now I could do this in my sleep, right? And what now? Sometimes it's a
yeah,
relationship that's like, well, what are we going to do here? It's sort of we either need to, do something, or it's no longer fulfilling. And
mm,
when those moments come, you feel it and the anxiety starts. And ignoring the anxiety usually doesn't work too well. I mean, you can meditate, you can go to yoga. There's some things you can do, but I'm more interested in helping people get to the like move, because if
yeah,
you can delay, we need the peace sometimes. We also need the growth. We need both.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And yeah,
because
we've had
otherwise,
we've had that conversation quite a lot along the way about that point of, like you say, feeling lost, needing a purpose, feeling stuck. These are all concepts that have come up over and over and over.
over and over, it's
And
universal.
tonight, yeah, I would
It,
say tonight, just for point of view viewers, tonight is the 40th one of these shows we've done, with the 28 night live, and then beginning the 52-week live. This is now number 40. So if anybody wants to go back and watch replays, I tell you what, to hear these patterns coming out over and
oh,
over. So now
you're
for you and I, this is the first time we've ever had a conversation, and we're doing it live on screen. But it's just amazing that when you hear that over and over and over, there's got to be something in it. And
there's something about the human condition that yearns for growth. And
yeah,
even if I don't know what that looks like, I know what it feels like when it's not happening, which is what you
yeah,
described. So I would much rather people be curious instead of just before you meditate it away, or what some people do is alcohol or sugar, or I mean, all these things people
mm,
do to put it away for just a little bit longer, but then eventually you wreck your health or you're not at your best. Come
mm,
join our tribe, and it can be enjoyable. It doesn't have to be. But one thing that doesn't work is just doing it by yourself. That
yeah.
seems hard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I've mentioned in the past about last year with things I went through. I had counselling, I had journey healing, I did yoga, I did bark flower remedies, I did all sorts of things, meditation and mindfulness and
Yeah.
getting out for walks. And, you just have to throw in a mixture of strategies. You can't just look at one thing and say,
Mhm.
that's it, that's going to cure me. And if it doesn't, then I failed. You have to kind of reflect and look at all different aspects of how you feel and find things, for all different parts. It's just not as straightforward, is it? Of just like you say,
Correct.
reading one book. That was it. Books was another one. So you do
Yeah.
have to look at
I
that.
mean, yeah. I mean, everything helps a little bit, and it's a little bit like a stew. It's that the answer is never just in one place. It's not just meditation or just yoga, and each humanoid is different.
I
What
like that
stew
stew.
works for you? Kay might need a little bit more oregano, and someone else might need a little bit of cloves or something. So it's not like here's how you do it. It's not. It's like different
Yeah.
things work for different people, but the exploration is part of the journey.
Mm.
So yeah. So that's
Oh
a great
yeah,
point, Katie.
absolutely.
That's a
And
wonderful.
yeah, and you said at the beginning about people having that purpose. And I think it's important sometimes when you're in that really low place or dark place, is actually the purpose could be simply finding happiness and working your way back up that emotional cycle and doing everything with a purpose to finding happiness. And it's really hard some days. And I always think, why is it so hard? Well, if you think about positivities at the top, the negative is at the bottom, gravity will always win over. Gravity is always the heavier one, and that's why it's always such a struggle not to
Well,
give up. Yeah.
yeah, and I think there are a couple things going on. One is it's the natural order of life for
Mm,
towards growth. So there is in everybody, no matter whether you're 3 or 93, there is an impulse towards
yeah.
the more. I mean, that's normal. that this growth towards the more is the purpose.
Yes.
But what seems to make it harder for us humanoids is the we get caught up in a weird way of thinking about what purpose is. There's a lot of resistance. Like
Mm.
children, they're happy one minute and miserable the next, and then they're happy again. They don't have a certain, well, you shouldn't, all of this conditioning layered on top of the impulse because they cry when they're upset. There's nothing wrong with crying if you skin your knees, right? I mean,
Mm.
you don't want to sit there and say, well, don't cry. Well, then it already started. It
Yeah.
already started, stop
Yeah.
crying. And so we've added on a layer of
Mm.
resistance. That is what's causing the suffering. Life is always with, I'm crying one minute and I'm upset the next. It should be a very dynamic flow towards the more. So if you are out there thinking, well, I should just know my purpose. First of all, it implies that there's one destination. And if you miss the memo, that you're done. And that I simply don't agree. I think at any moment we're on our purpose. It's also, in my mind, I said this on another show with another host, I don't think this asking yourself what your purpose is, I don't find it to be the most natural question.
Right.
Because the only people asking purpose, like what is my purpose? It's very, can you feel it's very
Mm.
cerebral. It's very amorphous. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, am I supposed to be an astronaut? Or like it
Mm.
takes people out of the moment. But
Yeah.
but really, if your purpose is just to be happy, well, my
Exactly.
goodness, people who are doing things that fulfill them or have relationships that are working or they're not asking what their purpose is.
Yeah.
It doesn't occur to them, like animals don't ask themselves what their purpose is. You're not going to meet a dog or a cat who's thinking about his purpose. He's just living. And when he's upset, he's upset. When he's up, so this concept, I think just gets ladled on top of everything that causes more angst than necessary. Because if you're sitting around thinking about your purpose, you're probably not in it. You're not in your life. You're thinking about your life, if that makes sense. And then there's this idea of, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss the memo. I don't want to screw up. And that just adds more pressure.
Mm. Yeah, no, I get it. Absolutely. And I think that's the big difference between having a purpose and living with purpose.
Yeah.
And living with purpose is about living for who you are in the here and now, not about necessarily that big purpose. And I think when you get that right, anything else, if you have that bigger purpose, will come from it anyway. That will then come naturally.
Sure. Yes. Love
Yeah,
it.
it just flows.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the time you're fighting it, you just don't find that bigger purpose, but you just need to find yourself first. And yeah, but I think
Yeah.
that it's almost like a universal genetic, like you as you're saying, everybody's driven for growth. As I see it with that emotional cycle, I will get it right one day, that side, the emotional cycle, everybody's driven towards happiness. We don't strive to be stressed or angry or depressed, but we all strive to be happy. And I think that's the connection between the two. It's the same thing, and it's through having something to do and being able to reflect on it, and then actually achieve and succeed. The rewards of whatever it is we've done is what brings us to that happiness, and it's
Yeah.
repeat, rinse and repeat. And I think it's that rinse and repeat that if you're not doing it with the right way and you're not doing it with purpose, that's what then becomes that, like we say, that washing machine or that big tsunami. So it's about understanding it and taking control through it. But so when
Yeah.
you say energy, tell us a little bit more about um, you say you like working with the energy. Tell us a little bit more about energy, in the types of energy, how you would explain to somebody what that means.
Yeah. Well, we've already started. There are many ways of working with energy. One is just in being in the conversation of these things, holding a vibration that has people go, right? Because right now, as we're talking, I'm actually holding a vibration. And that's why the conversation is flowing in a way that is enjoyable. And so there are many different kinds of energy work. And as a spiritual teacher, I use all of them. Some of them your audience probably is more aware of. They tend to be more bio-centered. So Reiki is a common one. I know in the UK, Reiki is probably very popular. In the US, more and more people are understanding traditional energy healing, the way it's described, has been the idea of running energy through the body. It doesn't have to be like in the same room. I work with people all around the planet, with just intention.
Mm.
And the traditional sense used to be around more related to illness. Oh, you've got a sore neck. Oh, cancer recovery. You've got an injury. And that was how I came up. Like my background was I was working in an integrative medical office. We had patients all over planet Earth looking for a better way to amplify the body's healing capacity, because you don't have to use drugs. Recovery time is much expedited. There's no weird side effects. People just feel better faster. So okay, we do that. And that's one level of energy healing.
Okay.
And my experience was, as I was working with more and more of it, I started becoming very curious as to why people had certain conditions, or what was it that would expedite some conditions more than others. If I had five, I don't know, shoulder injury people in front of me, and I'm doing the same thing to all five, and these are five very different people, what was it that would have one or two of them take off, like do really great, and the others are, there'd be a range. And I started to notice that there was another level of energy healing that was not always acknowledged in the traditional energy healing, where you work on this chakra, or you clear this in the auric field. Because I'm very sensitive to energy, I could see the aura, and I could feel what was going on with people, sometimes in a way that they couldn't. Like, everyone has blind spots, right? And
That sort of empathy where you can read
empathy,
emotions.
yeah,
Yeah.
because a lot
Mm.
of times there's more going on in the emotional and spiritual fields than the body. So the body's always the last piece. But like, if I'm working with someone who's got anxiety, let's say ulcers, for example, we can treat the ulcers, but I'm listening and going, wow, there's a lot, and I might say, gosh, I get the feeling there's a lot going on for you. And it might be related to what's going on in your body. And a lot of times people would start explaining, and I could feel into the energetic field. And I would start doing things. And there's another level of energy work that's not so injury oriented, but it's a little bit more of a emotional energetic release. There are many names for it. EFT, MDR, NLP, there are a bunch of them. They work differently, but they are energy healing. And you add these two together, and whoa. And then what happened after that was, Adele, what's really happening is people are having a spiritual awakening. And you're actually, I didn't realize it. I had become a spiritual teacher through this whole process. And so, because then I had to figure out, why is someone so anxious? Oh, they're doing work they don't like. They're in relationships that suck. Okay, so what would be useful there and in the awakening? Because there's always going to be a pullback. I don't know. And, and my job is just to walk in the garden with you while you're sort of, on the one hand on this, on the other hand on this, on the one hand, on Monday I want a divorce, on Tuesday I don't. On Wednesday I want a divorce, on Thursday I don't. There's this back and forth that has to be honored. And there's a lot being uncovered there. So that's a long story about how I became from a traditional energy healer to what I'm doing now. And it's all energy.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And yes, just very quickly, we've got some people in the room. We've got Yvette said evening earlier. We've got Ralph says hi from the UK as well. He said hi, Adele. Yvette,
Hello there.
hi. And Yvette said, yeah, so finding what, oh God, oh, sorry, I've gone blank. Finding what works best for you, what works for one doesn't work for someone else. That's right, Yvette. Yeah. So it is about each finding our own journey as well. And that's why this show is great, because it gives people an opportunity to listen in and sort of kind of gently explore different routes before making decisions on how to go and get help, or what type of help might inspire them where they've been stuck for some time. And there's always something new that can connect with somebody, which is what's so amazing about just having a conversation. It's just sharing knowledge and options. And for me, options is one of the most important things. How can you make choices until you know the options? So
Yeah.
first thing is being aware. So a lot of these conversations help people become aware, share those options, and then it's down to the audience to make their own choices on what they do. So it's always great to hear more. Have you? normally do a book of the day, and I didn't see anything on. Have you done a book or anything on yours?
Not specifically. I have a blog. I've got a TikTok channel. If people want to tune on there, where I put they're kind of goofy little clips, but I'm trying to teach a little bit at the same time.
Okay,
I mean, I'm on all of them: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I have a blog. I've got every SoundCloud. I just never
great.
decided. I didn't have time to put it together in a book, but eventually I will.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And what I'll do is I'll put a link down
Sure.
in the chat later as well to your website. In fact, I'll probably do that while we're talking in a minute. So if anybody does want to go and check out your blog and
Yeah.
your website,
What
feel
you know,
free.
what I'll do is I'll send you a thing to my link treats, like, one of those things that's got everything in one place. And that way
Yeah,
people can just, okay, let me see if this works here. Link treat, this
right.
great invention that'll tell you everywhere I'm at. So on LinkedIn, for example, I'm more, on TikTok, I'm wild and crazy. On Instagram, it's a little bit more airbrushed, so because these platforms are different and people
Yeah,
can tune into the one that they like.
brilliant. Right, I'm now going to copy and paste the web link in there. So if anybody wants to see that, they can. So yeah, like you're saying, even we can. That's when you can. I get the right word in a minute. Adapt your energy levels as well. So one thing is being aware, having your options, being able to understand and control your emotions, and when you can adapt your energy level. And it's
Yeah.
very often you find people who are struggling to adapt that energy level are people who have all those emotional traumas they're holding in. Or there's ways to release that. So it's amazing, this energy side of it. I love how you talk
Yeah.
about that, and
I
it's
think
great
I
because, as
think
you say,
I'm sorry,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, and what I love is with the energy side of it, is you're saying a lot of that energy is, people say about energy being connected around the universe, but we don't have to go for miles and miles and miles to see somebody about energy when you can do it. And the energy that we share across the globe, like from Atlanta to the UK, even by talking, is all emotional energy, isn't it? And I,
All we have is energy. And I
mm,
tell all my trauma clients, well, I tell all my clients really, that for most people, because I tend to work with very sensitive, intelligent professionals. So it's like the sensitivity is warring with the intellect. These are
mm,
people often highly empathic, very spiritual. They want to help people, and the mind, and then the pressures of corporate or whatever. And I basically say, what if English is not your first language?
mm,
Energy is.
yeah,
Before you could talk, you were already pinging the environment. And if there were weird things going on top of that with mom and dad, or things have happened, that it sort of
absolutely.
blew out your sensitivity a bit. And so rather than trying to, in fact, I just put out a TikTok video yesterday about being accused of being too sensitive. A lot of
Oh,
my clients are always saying, "Oh, you're too sensitive," as if it's a bad thing. And from my
yeah,
perspective, it just means you have a deeper capacity to feel,
mm,
with,
yeah.
like, how people with really good noses work in the perfume industry, and people with good ears work in the record. There are people who are really sensitive to energy, and that can be really useful.
And we have conversations on live television. That's what we do.
Oh,
Or not television, but live
there
shows.
you go.
Um, yeah, no, I do get you, and I've always had that ability to say, well, not always. I think it took me probably until my late 20s, early 30s to really start feeling that empathy. And for a lot of younger people, this might sound all a bit sort of woo-woo and sort of off with the fairy lights, but it takes time to develop this in the same way that when we're talking about young children, they're born with this ability to empathize with emotions around them. They know when adults are upset or angry. They know
Sure.
when adults are happy and smiling because they laugh back. So even like you said, from weeks old, they can sense that energy long before anything else. It's like I love those. There's a video, well, several videos on YouTube where a mother is singing to a baby, and there's one in particular. She's singing a sad song, and the baby's crying. Every time she stops singing and talks to the baby, he laughs. But as soon as she sings again, he cries again. And it's like this baby's obviously not old enough to talk or have a conversation, but the feelings that he's getting from what she's singing are unbelievable. Just to
Mhm.
watch that. So, when what we do around children has a massive impact on them from very early.
It
Um,
does.
but
And this
then
is
the terrible twos kick in. So it's like, to start with, Happy's a book. babies are born being able to be happy and sad. And it's like they're happy that they're fed and they're clean, and they're sad that they're hungry and they need to be changed. And then the other emotions come in later. Next one's anger comes in around twos, sometimes a bit earlier. We get all the terrible twos. They're suddenly exposed to this whole new emotion of, hang on a minute, I didn't get my way. What am I going to do about it? And they get angry and they throw themselves around. And they have to learn that whole process of learning to deal with this anger, this whole new emotion. And then from about 5 onwards, I think, when they hit school and they get bullied, then they start learning about depression and how it feels to be overwhelmed, or if they're in abusive families, etc. So it's just gradually building up this knowledge, but it takes many, many years of practice to actually reach that empathy level where they get to understand themselves and be able to see that and read that in other people. And I know it took me a long, long time to be able to. I thought it was sort of some magical thing people did when they could read emotions, and then it just sort of came to me over time. And the more the more I watched, the more I learned, the more I studied it. It just comes to you, and then you look at people and you can almost predict ahead what they're going to do from the emotional state they're in. And yeah, I love all that. I had a manager that I used to frustrate the life out of this manager, and he walked in one day and he walked in the office and he went, oh, like that. And all he did was just walked in and punched the air. And I said, that means something happened. It just wasn't in the way you expected it. He's like, how do you do that? Because he just didn't understand how I could read a sentence from one movement. But that's what that empathy is about, isn't it? About gradually understanding the person's emotions without using words, the same way as a baby would. Just more complex. So sorry, yes, I've ploughed away there, grabbed me.
No, I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And like I say, empathy is not an easy skill, but it's not an impossible skill, and it's there for everybody. And being able to watch and see and feel how other people think. And we all think we know how other people think, but
Oh
do we
yeah.
really? Do we really? And it's just really think not just what mood are they in now, but why are they in the mood they're in now? What's happened today? What's happened last week? What's happened last year? And being able to see behind all of that, and see the person behind the emotion as well. So yeah, big challenge. But yes, yeah. So yeah, you one of the words I picked up, because I love just picking out little keywords. One of the words I picked up from your website was about perfectionism. So how do you think perfectionism affects people's emotions, and how can they get past that?
Oh my goodness. Well, perfectionism is a learned behavior. Babies aren't learned to be perfect. That's not a natural impulse. So, for anyone who is struggling with perfectionism, the feeling in the body is one of it's never good enough. The wallpaper's not the right color. I don't like what my child did. Why did this happen? Like any sort of resistance to the present moment. There were times when I was really struggling with perfectionism in my depression. I could not stand to sit still and look around my apartment because everything I looked at had something wrong. Like my mind, the narrative in my brain was whatever's here is not right. And so this onslaught of, because I was only reflecting in myself, everything that I'm feeling is not right. Everything I'm doing is not right. This is a learned behavior. So if you are dealing with this, just know it's not the real you. Just know it's not the real you. You weren't born this way. And I know it might feel like you are because you've lived this way for X number of decades, but it's not a natural thing. It was learned. And the good thing about it is if it's learned, it can be unlearned. It's only when people think, oh, this is the way I am, then there's a certain resignation and I'm just going to suck it up for the rest of my life to just try to make everything perfect. It's a life of striving for an ideal. This could be the same with your partner. People who are perfectionists are often very hard to be around with their friends or their spouses. They don't realize it. And a lot of times it's because they were just trying to help. A perfectionist, well, if you just did it this way, you would be better off. I'm just trying to help. But not everyone appreciates that. But to the person who's trying to help, if you would just, then you would be happy and then I could be happy. So it's not always meant from a critical standpoint, but it sure feels like it. Because
Mm.
you're telling the other person that they can't do things just the way they're doing it. There's always a
Yeah.
desire, well, it'd be better if you did this. And, so
Yeah.
sometimes that unsolicited advice, as annoying as it is, it's coming from a well-intentioned place. And
Mm.
a perfectionist doesn't realize it. They think it's an expression of love, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
I think it is. Yes, I
yeah,
know. I've lived
try
with
a
that.
different way, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so for me, I didn't realize I was doing it. I had a problem with depression. Everything came to a slam dunk halt after a serious breakup with someone I was crazy about. He could hardly give me the time of day. And then I remember going, okay, I have failed as a perfectionist. I am not even a perfect perfectionist. I am, it's like, okay, if I've
That's an
identified I'm
interesting
a
concept.
perfectionist, I should be good at it, right? And
Mm.
I suck at being a perfectionist. And so everything sort of crashed and burned at that point. And I said, I'm tired of trying. I can't anymore. This isn't working. All the
Yeah.
self-help books, all this stuff. And so I went the other route. We don't have time to get into it today, but I worked with a lot of medicine people, um, spiritual teachers and healers, because I really had no idea who I was. A perfectionist is not a real person. It's a role. It's a facsimile, a representation of somebody. But there is
Mm.
a humanoid behind that. And I didn't know who she was. And that it's like being
Mm.
put in a glass box where you're pounding, trying to get out. You see the party in the next room, but they can't touch you and you can't touch them. It's really isolating. And
Yeah.
so through a series of a lot of deep work, I've come out the other end, and now I really get on a deep experiential level, energetically, what these words mean and how they keep people in suffering. What worked for me, I often share with other people. I've discovered it's often faster than some other conventional methods. I'm like, for whatever works, for some people, I know the kind of person that I'm meant to serve. I can usually see them a mile away. They're usually fairly educated, intelligent, spiritual, sensitive, kind, and inside there's a tsunami. So
Yeah.
because that was me. So we typically help people that are like us. Wouldn't you agree,
Yeah.
Kay? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, same here. It's like me. I like helping parents with teenagers where they're struggling to connect with them, and that all that whole emotional bonds one part. So yeah, very much the struggle I had with my son. So yeah, same again. And I've met a lot of people along this journey with the live discussions who do take what they've been through to help other
Yeah.
people, and it's amazing. And it does. It's a way of people creating a triumph out of trauma. And like you said at the start, it's almost like that point where they've come out of that washing machine cycle and
Yeah.
found their purpose and a way to live with a purpose, but actually bringing something positive from it all. And I love that story that comes through over and over.
Well,
And
it's a beautiful story what you're just saying, Kay, because if I had two authors in front of me or two coaches writing about teens and parenting,
mm,
and one had been through a horrible experience and the other one didn't even have children, but they both
mm,
went to school, they both studied, which one do you think would have a vibration of,
yeah,
it's like that. So I have lived
that's very
this, and
good.
that's why I have a vibration that some people will say, "Oh my God, she's so much like me." Those are the people I'm
Mm,
meant to serve. Just like parents are reaching for help with teens, they're going to naturally. Same thing with people, the former drug addicts that now counsel people struggling with alcohol, because they know what it's like. There's a wisdom in the knowledge versus someone who studied how to treat alcoholism from like graduate school or something. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it's funny you say that because one of the things I got questioned a lot, and we're talking about having lived with perfectionism, I was living with somebody who was very much that perfectionist. Like I couldn't even go and cook peas without him coming in and saying, "Oh, you've got it on the wrong temperature. You need to
Yeah.
move the lid." It was like if I couldn't even go and cook peas in the kitchen without being interfered with, I was getting like,
Yeah. You're just
yeah,
trying to help. Yeah.
yeah, I know. um, so I've had all of that and lots and lots of little things throughout the marriage, but I don't have to listen to that when I'm cooking my dinner anymore, which is lovely. So But it's also this, I've lost the thread now. Do you know what?
No, that's beautiful, because
I've
if
done
you
that
were
before
if you
now.
were
Just losing
truly a
it.
kid again, the kid
Yeah.
be like, I want to cook peas. Let's see what happens. I mean, there's much more of a, well, let's try it this way. Well, there's none of that.
Yeah.
There's one way to do it, right? So we're
Yeah.
all trying to unlearn and get back to age 5 again with everything.
Yeah. But you know what was really frustrating was getting out of that, and I had to go and move in with my parents for a month. And I know my dad will probably watch this at some point and tell mum about it. But I moved back in with my parents, and my mum was then trying to teach me how to microwave beans. It's like, for goodness sakes, give me a break. Like, how old do you think I am? I
Yeah,
can cook beans in a microwave, but she's got such a perfectionist way of doing everything that my mum is actually very much, everything's got to be to her way.
because
You have
there's
to
an,
cook everything in the right vessel at the right
yeah.
time. And,
Oh,
oh,
it's a miserable way to live. And there's an element of control behind it, because if
yeah.
you don't do it right, you don't know what could
Oh, I know.
I mean, serious. A 5-year-old doesn't care. Let's try 5 minutes in the microwave. Let's try 50 minutes in the microwave. Let's see what happens. I mean, there's much more of that. Life can be much more of an exploration, and that's how we should all be more.
Mm.
Somehow it got
I
both
do
of what?
prove them right sometimes. I've got one of those. It's really, really cold the other week with all that snow, and I've got one of those wheat packs that you heat up like a hot water bottle. So you
Mm.
put that in the microwave, and I put it on for 2 minutes, and it's so warm that'll keep me warm for a couple of hours, and then I eventually just chuck it out the bed.
Mm.
Anyway, I put it on one night, and I went to do something, and then I thought the microwave's still going. I hadn't put it on for 2 minutes. I pushed the wrong button and put it on
Oops.
for 20.
Oh.
By this point, it'd been on about 7 minutes. So instead of smelling like lavender, it smells like toasted wheat now.
Oh, you're allowed,
It
right?
was so cold that night. It was like, I'm not letting go of it. So I wrapped it up in the towel. I put loads of extra lavender on it and just went to bed with it anyway, because I didn't care. It was just so cold that night. But,
Yeah.
things go wrong. Things go wrong, but we never laugh
Yeah,
about
I
it.
mean, I'm glad you can laugh about it, because true perfectionists can't get over themselves. I mean, they're so angry with themselves. How could I be so stupid? Oh my God, this means I cannot do it. And before they know it, they've lost an hour out of their day trying to recover from their failure. So
Mm.
if anyone is listening and you're struggling with this, if you recognize yourself in this, give Kay or me, one of us, a shout. There is a way through this. This is what I specialize in. What I typically do is just have a conversation with people. What's going on?
Mm.
And, we can talk about if what I do might be useful to you, but I'm very approachable. I like to just, hey, I'm here to serve. And, don't live like that too much longer.
Yeah.
It's not a fun way. The
No, no.
inner critic. Oh,
Yeah, and I think that is partly inner critic, but there's so many reasons why somebody can lead into that anxiety cycle to begin with. So many reasons.
absolutely.
It can be childhood illness, it can be trauma, it can just be the culture of the family or the community.
Mhm.
It can be their own self beliefs as well. Because say with my own son, he grew up with chronic depression, and it wasn't
Mhm.
something we taught him, but it's
Mhm.
something he drew from his own mind, things he read and saw on the telly. So that can all be an influence as well. So many things for a youngster growing
Yeah,
up that can
we're
lead to that.
complex creatures. It's not always
Mm,
X causes Y. There are a million combinations and permutations of life. And
yeah.
I don't always find it helpful to get too caught up in the specific of whys. I mean, if you know, you know. But sometimes people feel
Mm,
like they've got to get to the bottom of why they are a certain way. And I'm like, because the
mm,
mind says, if I gotta know, I gotta know. And my thought is, well, you might someday when you're 99 years old, but let's focus on you just feeling better.
yeah.
And we can do both at the same time. And that way, even if you never get to the bottom of it, as long as you're feeling better, good enough, right? Your life
Yeah.
is moving. Because I think sometimes people say, hold the phone. I can't do anything till I get to the bottom of why I'm a certain way. And that's a nice way to keep from moving, because the ego will
Mm,
always find more stuff to hang on to and,
yeah.
dig around in
I
there.
think I think sometimes people focus on the why because they want to find the root cause of why they get into this particular cycle of emotions, why they keep making the same mistakes or feeling the same way. But I think what's more important is recognizing the pattern of emotions you go through, and when it happens again, recognizing it and being able to halt it and stop it.
I think knowing the why can be useful, but it's not the only thing that's
Mm,
useful, because sometimes people feel like if they get to the why, then they can fix it. Um,
mm,
and, even if you knew why your mom abused you, will that really help you feel better now?
no. Mm.
I mean, the mind says, well, I need to know. Well,
Well,
and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
even if you knew why that happened, will that really give you new insight and so that your heart feels better? Or is it just more insight? Because
Mm,
more insight sometimes doesn't make anyone feel any better. It's just more insight. And this is
yeah.
the
I
problem of
totally
therapy.
agree.
Sometimes people can be talking a long time. They're very
Mm,
clear and elucidate about all their issues and stuff. And I can take one look at the heart chakra and I'm like, this still really hurts. I mean, if you're not
mm,
feeling better from all these insights, let's try something else. You still have the insights, right? I mean, it's still there, but more insight does not seem to be helping you.
no.
So this is where
I,
energy work can be very
yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are sometimes though it does help people. Like for example, if somebody's had an abusive relationship with their parents, I think it can be really helpful for them to perhaps learn that maybe their parents had been through the same, and so they didn't know any different. So it wasn't they were doing it on purpose. They were
Yeah.
doing it because it's. So I
It,
think sometimes it can help with forgiveness, but not
it,
always.
I think, like I said, everything helps.
Yeah,
Everything, all of these work, yoga helps, good nutrition, meditation, journaling,
all of that. Yeah.
affirmations. So there's not just one thing, but if you've done all those and you're still hurting,
Mm,
energy, you can clear that up, So I'm just offering another way, another part to go into the stew. Add some
mm,
oregano, maybe that's
yeah.
the thing that can make the stew bloom, especially if you're just burning the midnight oil with only journaling or only
Mm,
self-help books, like, and you don't feel any better. Or maybe its progress is very slow. So I work with a lot of people that have been on the spiritual and personal development path for a long time, but the progress is slow because
mm,
number one, it's being done by themselves. Number two, people tend to overuse what they're already good at. So what I mean by that, like in the chakra system, if you're
yeah.
naturally already a sixth and seventh chakra person, you're going to gravitate towards practices that are sixth and seventh chakra oriented and just keep hammering at them. But sometimes
Mm,
you need something in the
I'm with you.
second chakra, you know,
Yeah.
and you just didn't know because we tend to gravitate towards what feels familiar, what we know, and we
Mm,
don't know what we don't know. So it's like
mm,
our vision goes this way. Well, we're trying to go like I'm
mm.
trying to say, hey, there's also stuff over here that could be really useful.
Yeah, that's almost along the lines of habits, but as much as building bad habits, trying to build good habits, but building good habits are sometimes still not quite the right ones. They might want tweaking a little bit. And this is where
Yeah.
sometimes, like you were going back to the very beginning of the conversation about, we all need that human connection to
Yeah.
help us through these difficult times. And it's absolutely right because having somebody else's objective view, I mean, blimey, it's even this week, I posted something in a forum and somebody answered. It was a short answer, but it was like, ah, I hadn't thought of it that way. And even I learned, I'm always learning. And, like yourself,
Yeah.
been on the personal development journey for years, but there's always something new,
There's always
always something
something
helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got such different experiences. So it's always
new.
amazing to talk about it like this. So I just love
Mhm.
these conversations because so much comes out. So if anybody else has any comments at any point, please do put them in the chat and ask Adele or ask myself, and we can bring them up on screen. But it's lovely to have people watching and joining in, and these get watched so much more on replay afterwards.
Oh,
So that's
sure.
the important thing is we do have to remember people get watched on replay, and it will
Yeah.
go up on YouTube as well. So I
Okay,
always promote
great.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just restricted to Facebook because a lot of people are sort of moving into other areas now, but I do put it on YouTube. So yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, the other thing we briefly touched on before the meeting, before we came live, was about feminine and masculine essence and energies as well. Um, what would you say makes a difference between a man and a woman with the healing journey and personal development in terms of their
Yeah.
individual energy?
Well, whether it's men, women, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. But the foundational piece is more embodiment. And this is a part of this the personal development that a lot of people aren't familiar with because we're very conceptual people. We like to think about our issues and problems. Nothing wrong with that. Embodiment is a very different experience. And in embodiment work, the men, I'll just use classic men and women for simplicity. The men and women have some different preferences and how the physical energy likes to be in the body. It's similar, but there's a couple slight differences. And when people can be in their natural preference, they will generally feel more relaxed, more confident, more in the flow. And so, like, for example, if I teach a co-ed group of half men and half women, I don't tell them, okay, men run your energy this way, women run your energy that way. I just do it. When people are in their natural preference, the room sort of blooms, that people feel really good and appreciated. There's a lot higher joy factor. People start feeling better for no reason, which is groovy. You don't have to pump yourself up with affirmations and stuff. It just sort of happens. So in the feminine presence work, yeah, because in our culture, a lot of women have shut this down big time.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm
and
with you on that one. Yes.
oh my God, then there are many reasons for it. And this yearning to turn it back on. So that is a big chunk of my work in helping women activate their it factor. And men have an equivalent power center. It's just slightly different. These little tweaks, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much more ready to engage with people for intimate or fulfilling relationships. It's really groovy. Yeah. So I run small groups on Zoom. And they're not huge. Spark your feminine presence. If that interests you, reach out. I can just put you on the waiting list for the next one. There are times in the year that I run them because it's not open all the time. They always fill, because, and then I shut down the enrollment. But yeah, if people want to just have a conversation, I want to be more in my feminine, but I don't even know what that is. We can talk about it and see if you'd be interested in this type of work. It's deep spiritual work, because
that sounds really interesting, because like you said, so many people have tried to there is an essence of there needs to be some inclusivity with men and women together in a lot of areas where they were excluded. There's no denying that.
Absolutely.
Like particularly around board tables and in parliament and things like that. So there's a lot of areas where that's really important. But I think it's also being careful not to take that to the extreme, that you exclude the fact that we also need a balance.
What's happened is
those niche groups as well. Yeah.
In the drive for independence and success, women have sometimes inadvertently shut down the most beautiful and soft and sensual part of themselves. So if you have masculine essence here and feminine essence here, we need for I'm talking about partnership relationships. We need both, and you need common values. What's happening in this culture is that people are sort of meeting in the middle because we're so uncomfortable with what this is. Men in particular are really baffled, right? So there's like the meeting in the middle. If you only have polarity in a relationship, it's a hot mess. If you only have common values in a relationship, it feels like a friendship. We need both. So and women up to now they haven't had a place to explore and, well, I don't know, and be curious. So you can walk into any room and attract more of the kind of attention you want, whether it's in dating, whether it's in the corporate situation. Women really struggle with voice in the boardroom. They say something, nobody listens. Then the guy sitting next to her says it, and all of a sudden everybody thinks it's fabulous. It's a classic example. So how can we get women's voices heard? It's not so much the body language. It's an energetic awareness. Yeah.
It's funny actually you say that, because just very briefly, Ralph's put, hi, I'm very much enjoying this conversation and feel I'm getting a lot of value from this evening. Thank you, Ralph, for that. That's lovely. Really nice. Thank you. But yeah, saying about that feminine energy, I used to work for an offshore wind farm. So this is going back about 10 years ish. There was an incident where a piece of machinery that was 100 meters high out to sea had to shield in a storm, and it parked over some fishing pots and damaged them. So there was had to be this meeting between the wind farm and the fishermen. So you can imagine the masculine energy that was going to be brought to that room from two completely different cultures working in the same space at sea. So because it was going to be 100% men, fishermen, and the managers from the wind farm were going to be men, and they knew what the energy would be like. It's very interesting saying this. They asked me to sit in for the purpose of taking meetings, just so there was some feminine energy in the room, so that everybody remained calm. And
Yeah.
that's sometimes all it takes. But yeah, they specifically asked me to be there just because they said otherwise they knew what would happen. And
Mhm.
yeah, that did happen after they'd left the room, after they'd left the office. But it stayed calm in the office. That was the main thing. But it was, yeah, it can make a difference. And I noticed the other thing is, because I've worked in a lot of very male-dominated environments around the engineering and sort of mechanical workshops and places in the past. And it's really, it just always amuses me how, like, if you walk into the canteen and all the engineers are getting ready to go somewhere or do a job, and they're all standing there chatting, there is this very specific male energy. But the minute one of them twigs there's a woman in the room, it's
Mhm.
like this ripple effect, and they all
Mhm.
just go,
Yep.
and they change,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
energy shifts right in front of your eyes. So
A
it's like
group
they,
of men behave very differently than a group of men with one woman.
yeah. But then that makes me realize that actually they're trying to be two different people, because they're trying to be who they are in a male environment and who they are when there's a woman in the room, where a woman tends to be who she is no matter what. Although saying that, I have seen women when they get together for niche parties and sort of do exclusive little sort of home parties and things, and they can be quite crude as well. Um, they can bring out an energy all of onto their own, um, and they can also be very supporting and caring. But there's this whole thing with men having this big male ego sort of bantering energy, and then this supportive energy, and I think that must be really confusing for them at times, and
This is
having to switch between the two, it must be quite, I don't
this is
know, draining.
well, this is all energy. This
Mm,
this is, I mean, it fits part and parcel with energy healing, energy awareness. So our
mm,
understanding of energy, what I'm hoping for is that this conversation helps expand people's awareness of what happens with energy. Like, it's not just a technique of running energy through the body. It's
mm,
where do you go in front of men? So if you've got 10 men in a room and a woman walks in, the woman being aware what's happening to her internal energy. A lot of women have no idea. They've
mm,
not developed any sort of awareness of their internal energy. They're just gone in scanning the environment, right? And same thing
mm,
with men. The ability to know your own energy right now as a culture is very weak. People don't
mm,
think about it. They go into their heads and they shoot out at other people. What do you think? It goes out, right? Versus
yeah,
being more present, embodied, because then the data you get from the environment is going to be more accurate, and you're going to be able to do more with less energy, and you're just going to be happier.
yeah,
People with more energetic presence get paid better. They get noticed more on YouTube, or like if you're scanning through your social media, you're scrolling on this thing. What is it that has some people just catch your attention for a moment? And even if the volume is off, right, there's a quality, and it's not a performance energy. There's something else that's
mm, okay,
transcending that has you just stop for a minute. Huh, I wonder what Kay's saying here. And that's how you can reach people. And it's not about winning friends and influencing people in a manipulative way. It's understanding, where is your energy? Is it blasted out? Are you disappearing into the curtains? Are you leaking to one side? A lot of women are very ambivalent about their feminine
mm,
energy. I mean, I can take one look at them and I know they're very uncomfortable with it. And sometimes things have happened, and so there's
mm,
a little bit of healing that needs to be going on with that. Men, same way. They've been assigned a certain role. They didn't ask for it. They were told this is what you're supposed to be doing. And they're like, so there's a lot of energetic spiritual work around this. And all of this
yeah,
part and parcel to be better parents. If you've got teens that are squirrely, this stuff will help
yeah.
you be happier.
Absolutely, and it's quite interesting because it was understanding the other people. As I said, one of my favourite books is Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, and I've mentioned this so many times that the chapter in there about understand before being understood is all about that ability to look and see what the other person's going through and understand them before you, like you say, firing energy out, because sometimes firing energy out is like the superheroes, they're shielding. So sometimes when you think you're being powerful and you're like, okay, we're going to do that, and you sort of like put these walls up, that can also be like a sign of, I'm afraid to let something in. So
Yeah,
something you think you're
exactly.
good,
Like,
you're
oh my
doing
God,
something, but it's
incoming.
showing a weakness. Yeah.
It's incoming. And the reason why people struggle with understanding or being understanding the other person is because they don't understand themselves. If
Mm.
you don't even understand yourself and you're trying to understand the other person, chances are highly likely you're going to arrive at some wonky conclusions, you know.
Mm.
But if people could spend a little bit more energy on understanding themselves first, then their ability to understand other people will be quantumly better. And then their ability to be
Absolutely.
understood will be also better too. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That is amazing. And yes, yes. So, wow, this has been quite a powerful conversation tonight.
I hope
Yvette says
so.
this
I
is
enjoyed
very
it.
interesting. Yvette says this is very interesting tonight. Well done to you both. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, no,
And
honestly, it's
yeah,
an incredible
welcome,
conversation.
hearing from people. What did this bring up for you? I'll come back to your page, Kay, and I'll look at the comments and I'll
Thank
try to
you.
reply if people have questions. I'm pretty accessible. If people want to reach out and have a conversation and just, explore what's going on in your world, feel free to reach out with that. But I'm just delighted to be on this show with you, Kay. I think what you're doing is awesome. 52 shows a year. Oh my God. I mean,
Well, this is one a week. That's easy compared to the 28-day challenge. That I love doing that, but that was you sort of got to a point where you get about half to three-quarters of the way through, and you're like, oh, why did I start this? But once I discovered StreamYard, which we're streaming through now, rather than doing it directly through Facebook Live, it's made such a difference. And I hope everybody loves the new color tonight, because normally I just have the two pictures like smack bang on the screen. But yeah, we're
very
going for a new
attractive.
look. We're upping the energy.
I love it. It makes me happy looking at these colors.
Yeah, and then again, it's just simple things like a change of color can change the energy of what you're delivering out, as well as what you're receiving back. So hopefully we'll connect with more people, get more viewers, and yes, we've got a few minutes left, but we've got an amazing speaker coming next week as well. And next week, we have can't say it now. Tiger, right. Next week, and I don't edit, that stays in. Next week, we have human connections expert. He is a best-selling author. He is a TEDx speaker who has had over 3.3 million views on his TEDx talk. And his name is Brian Miller, and he's a magician from Nova Scotia in Canada. So he is coming to talk to us next week about a little bit about how he struggled with depression as a teen, and how that's led him through to becoming a human connection expert. So here is a guy who, from a very quite young age, in terms of maturity, has actually really mastered life and mastered change, because anybody who can master magician work can master change. So this guy is leap years ahead of me in terms of progress, but I'm so excited to talk to him on the show next week as well. And I have really, really enjoyed talking to you tonight.
I have too. This has been fun. I hope your audience gets a lot of good value. I think what you're doing is fantastic.
Thank you. And Ralph says, do you ever use essential oils with your energy work, like other things to help initiate the senses?
I do. I also use flower essences. Essential oils have a little bit more of an oil component, a fragrance. Flower essences, there's not a scent, but there's a vibration. I've used them both because I'm a certified whatever. I got a piece of paper that says I know what I'm doing with them and I enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's energy. It's another
Brilliant.
energy modality.
Yeah, all types of energy. That's amazing. Well, we're pretty much there. So thank you so much to everybody. And yes, so Ralph said good night, everyone. Stay safe. Can't wait for the next one. Thank you.
Yay!
And warming feeling in the background. Love it. Thank you. So no, that is amazing. I have really loved tonight, and it'd be great to keep in touch. And
Absolutely.
yes, so that's the 40th show concludes. My goodness, that's just all since, I think it was about the 10th of November I did the first one. No, about the 12th. I think it was 12th of November. So
Wow.
that's an incredible journey from there. And if anybody ever goes back to watch the first live and see the difference between now and then, this is what energy and growth, and we're talking about growth and progress. This show tonight, compared to the very first one, which is not on YouTube, but that's available through the website at the moment, there's a booklet on the free stuff page called 28 Days to Cry. And I'm now going to re-upload my website in this next week, so that link might move a little bit, but I will relink it back here. But that booklet is my story from last year. It has the links to all of the 28 night live challenges that I did in November, December. And I tell you what, if you see the quality from there to tonight, that's what growth is all about. It's
Sure.
not about being perfect, it's about taking steps one
As
at a time and just making a little bit of change one step at a time. And before you know it, it's so different. You look back and you think, oh my goodness, how bad was I back then? But do you know what? It was making those steps, taking those change, and just getting up and doing something rather than nothing. And that's the purpose we're talking about tonight. Not necessarily having a big purpose in life, but just having a purpose to get through another day, another week, or another month, and tapping into that energy that we've all got within us. So thank you so much tonight, Adele, for sharing
oh
really
well.
such an energetic talk with us. You have energy in abundance. It's lovely, and we really value that tonight. Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you
we'll
for
see you
having me.
all 7:30, 7 p.m. GMT next Tuesday. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you.